So now we're in our custom settings menu, and you can reset this if you want to camera standards by using the reset custom settings. I'm not going to because I don't want to do that. But by arrowing down, I can start by getting into my autofocus settings, and you'll notice they all have those A, B, C, D, E, and F labels on the left hand side. And if you go over, you see that the whole menu, you can cycle through the whole menu. That's just a quick way to get to different options over there in that menu. So now we're in the autofocus section where I can choose first your AFC priority selection. So if you go over, you can decide whether or not you want your camera to be able to take a picture if the photo is out of focus or not. So if you have it set to release, then the shutter will go even if the picture isn't in focus. But if you have it set to focus, then the camera will only let the shutter fire if the photo's in focus. So that's if you're not able to take a picture and it's out of focus, go ahead and switch it to release mode if you want to be able to do that. You want to have your built-in AF assist illuminator on if you're in a dark area, or if you're doing anything with flash and you want red eye reduction, you want this to be on. If it's off, then of course it won't work, and that can be a problem. But if you're in a place where you don't want that on for one reason or another, if the light's going to be a problem, then you can go ahead and flip that off. Rangefinder is an option when you are out of manual mode and you are manually focusing. So you're not in manual mode, but you are manually focusing. If you hit the rangefinder on, then in the viewfinder here, when you look through, you will see, you're not going to be able to see it here, but you will be able to see if your focus is behind or forward of the subject with these arrows that'll point left or right, and it'll tell you whether or not you're in focus in manual mode exactly straight on. So, but like I said, it doesn't work in manual. It only works in non-manual modes, but with manual focus going on. And then we move into exposure settings. So you can go ahead and set your exposure value steps for different control options. So if you want to do your exposure compensation with 1/3 of a step or 1/2 of a step, you can change it here. Your shutter release button, auto exposure lock, you can choose to have on or off. So if you halfway click on your shutter release button and this is on, then it won't change the exposure for you. But if it's off, then the auto exposure will change even if you have the shutter pressed halfway down. Auto off timers. So this is where you can change the settings for how long it takes before things go away. If they're long or custom, it might drain your battery a little bit, but it also can be helpful to have a little bit longer viewing time for your options on those off timers for the camera and for the LCD screen and other things. Then you have your self timer option. So this is where you can set your self timer. You have a number of different second options, up to 20 seconds, 2 to 20, and you just hit OK, and then you can decide how many shots you want. Just use the arrows to go up or down, and then OK to set that. And then if you're in your auto timer mode or your self timer mode, then you can go ahead and shoot, and you will get to choose exactly what you need. You also have remote duration. So if you're using a remote and you want the camera to keep recognizing that remote for 15 minutes, you can change that to 15 or all the way down to 1. The camera will bump out of remote mode after that amount of time if it hasn't sensed anything from the remote. You can turn your beep on and off. I hate beeps, so I turn them off. Shooting weddings and whatnot, you don't want beeps going on. So then you have your ISO display. You can either have that on or off. I like to see that, so I have it on. Your file number sequence can be on, off, or you can reset that. So as you take new pictures, if you need to reset the numbering system for your files, you can do it right there. Exposure delay mode. So if you happen to be wanting a 1 second delay before your exposure fires so that your mirror doesn't create any camera shake, then you can have that on. And of course, that's only going to be important when you're doing very, very long exposures, so that you don't have that camera shake interference from the mirror, because it's a very minor shake. But if you are doing an extremely long exposure for some reason, that might be helpful if you're getting some shake that you don't want. Print date, you can have embedded on the picture. If you do this, you can't get it off later. So know that if you have it on, it's not coming off unless you crop it out later. So I don't have that on. Flash control for the built-in flash. You can decide if you want to use manual or through the lens flash control. So TTL will meter everything for you and do its best to create the correct exposure with the flash. Manual allows you to create the look that you want by selecting the amount of flash you want to use. So you might experiment with that a little bit and see what you like. Auto bracketing set. So you can decide which, hit OK. You can decide when you're in auto bracketing whether you want it to be auto exposure bracketing, white balance bracketing, or dynamic light bracketing. So you have some choices there. I like exposure bracketing if I'm going to use my auto exposure, so I leave it there. You can also change the function button here. So you can have it be all sorts of different options. That function button, that if you'll remember from the first video, is right there. That's what we're changing. So you can change it to whatever you want. I'm going to leave it on self-timer because I like having it on self-timer. You can also assign this button, your AEL and AFL button here, that has different modes. So this mode will lock both the autofocus and the auto exposure, but only when you're hitting the button. You have to hold the button down. Auto exposure lock only, of course, just locks the exposure, but again, you have to have the button held down for that to continue happening. Autofocus lock, the same. Auto exposure lock hold, which is what I have it selected to be, leaves it locked even after you press the button, which is very helpful in video mode. So if you're going to be filming, I would suggest that you have your auto exposure lock hold selected for that. And then you have autofocus on option as well. Underneath that, you have reverse dial rotation. Have that off unless you want to move the opposite direction of the way that you are intuitively thinking about the dial. Though perhaps if you're from another country and things are done differently, you might want it reversed. I'm not sure. But it literally just makes it so that if you rotate that way, values go up, versus going to the right, values go up. So to me, that makes more sense to have it off. But you're welcome to switch it. Slot empty release lock. Just tells your camera whether or not it can take a picture even if there's no SD card in place. So if you want to be able to take a picture that you're not going to record for anything, then you can go ahead and use OK and enable the release. If you don't want to be able to take a picture or release the picture, then hit lock and it won't let you when there's no SD card in place. So either one works. You just get a preview. If you have it enabled, you just get a quick preview of the image. So there might be a reason why you want to do that. You can also reverse the indicators. So if you want to switch so that these go the opposite direction from, if that makes sense, you can switch it so that the plus exposure side is to the right or to the left. Whatever is intuitive and useful for you. All right, so then we are done with our custom setting menu. So underneath the custom menu, we have the setup menu. So this is where you can find to format your memory card. So it's important to format your memory card to clear off all the pictures and have as much recording space as possible, but only after you've backed everything up at least once. Make sure that all of the pictures that you want are off of that card before you format, because you're not getting anything back after that. So if you want to do that, you can hit the right arrow key and it'll ask again just to make sure that you want to do that. And I'm not going to in case we need to look at some pictures, so I will say no, let's not do that right now. Monitor brightness, you can alter here by hitting the right button and then the up or down arrows to change your monitor brightness. I'll leave it back at 0. You can hit the back button to get back to your menu. info display format is really just the way that you see that info screen, you know, this one. I have it on green right now, yeah. So you have different options. You can go into graphic. I have it on green. You can make it black, brown. You can go to classic. You have a couple different options there. Whatever you like, whatever looks pretty. Auto info display on. This, if it's on, allows the info display screen to pop up after you press the shutter button halfway down. So it'll pop up if you just hit that shutter button. If it's off, then that won't happen. Clean image sensor. So you can clean it now if you feel like it needs to be cleaned, or you can have it set to clean at startup or shutdown, or both. I have it on both because as clean as it can be. You can also lock the mirror up for cleaning here if you happen to have the skill to clean your sensor yourself. Video mode we'll talk about more in the video section of the video. HDMI options. You can change your output resolution and the device control, whether or not it's allowed to be on or off there. Flicker reduction, again, we'll talk about in video mode, but it's right here in the setup menu. Time zone and date, you can go ahead and set to make sure everything's correct. I have it all set. I don't want to mess it up. But you can just use your arrow buttons to go over, up and down to change things. Okay when you're happy with things. You can change your date format here based on where you live. And daylight savings time on or off, depending on the part of the country or country you happen to be in. Change your language here. Image comment, if you want to be able to leave a comment, I think it's up to 36 characters, you can do that. I don't do that, so I just have it off. But if you wanted to be able to, you can. Auto image rotation on or off, whatever you decide you want to do. Image dust off reference photo is a place where you can take a photo of a really plain white thing, just a wall or something that doesn't have any marks on it, and then the camera will use that to find dust spots on the sensor and automatically try and remove those from raw files. You can clean your sensor first to start if you want to do this. It'll clean your image sensor, and then it'll tell you what to do. So 10 centimeters away from lens, and the focus will be set to infinity. And then it'll go ahead and allow you to do that. I'm not going to do that, so we don't need to worry about it. But then it walks you through using that. GPS, if you're going to be using your GPS, this is where you get to the settings there. Your auto meter on or off, and which can save battery life. If it's off, auto meter off, if you have this selected to be on, then it'll save your battery life while you're connected to your GPS. And if you have it off so that the auto meter is on, it's a little confusing, then you can use all your settings and the meter stuff is there in case you need it, but it does zap battery a little bit more. And position, you'd have to have a GPS to be able to do some of this stuff, of course, but you should be able to walk through all of that once you get your GPS. Use GPS to set camera clock if you need to. Okay, firmware version just gives you information about the firmware. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Nikon D5100 videos. Please check us out on Facebook on the links below in the description. You can check out David D Images, the Media Unlocked Facebook, and my studio's Facebook at Spotlight Photo. Have a good one. Bye.